American sympathies in the Middle East have completely flipped. So previously, Israel had a 43-point lead over the Palestinians. Kind of a funny way to describe it, like we're talking about basketball or something. But in favorability, they had a 43-point lead over the Palestinians. Now, let's put up graphic 6. It has reversed. And the Palestinians now have a 5-point lead. 41% of Americans sympathizing with them, and only 36 with Israel. That is a giant difference. And that trend is unlikely to reverse itself. So what you're probably gonna see is now the other side of that going forward, where the Palestinian sympathy continues to go up and the Israeli sympathy continues to go down. Look, Democrats here are enormously different. And what's interesting about that, so that's the chart on the left, and it shows now Democrats are at 65% for the Palestinians, 17% for the Israelis. And they had a lot of sympathy for the Palestinians all along. The Democratic voters did, God bless them. Certainly vis-a-vis the rest of the country. But for a second there, the Israelis caught up because of October 7th. It makes sense, right? Where we all had sympathy for Israel. Boy, did they blow that, right? If you're just looking at it from a point of view of like what's better for Israel, these charts are not good for Israel. And they did that. They could have responded, left it alone, and the chart would have gone in the right direction. Instead, they abused and genocide and on until the Democratic voters were like, we've had enough of you. 17% is a disastrous number. 75% of Democrats think that we shouldn't send any more money to Israel. Later in the show, we'll show you how Hakeem Jeffries is working behind the scenes to funnel money to Democratic candidates to support Israel. Right? So like our opinions, whether you're Republican or Democrat, are nearly irrelevant because the funders control almost everything. You see the Republicans still there, seem like they're unmoved, but they got moved by a decent number, about 10 points at least, from its lowest point to now. But that's deceptive because under 55, Republican support for Israel is falling off a cliff. So that chart's gonna look very different soon based on the other polling. Last one's independents because they're always the most important. 41 to 30 now, independents against Israel and sympathizing with the Palestinians. Look, you don't have to be against Israel at large, but within the context of the occupation and the genocide, etc. I'd say I'm stunned that there's any support for Israel left, but most of these numbers of the support for Israel are buttressed by above 55. So because on average, people above 55 still watch TV and cable news and consume mainstream media. People under 55 are online. Online you get reality, in mainstream media you get Israeli propaganda slop. So that's why I don't blame those people. They don't know that it's a genocide. They've like barely ever heard of the occupation. They think Israel's been attacked every single time. They don't know any of the realities of what's happened. Yeah. So last thoughts, guys, on this.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say I think it speaks to how profound these graphs actually are, because yeah, when you consider that the vast majority of people are sitting at home getting a tried and true narrative, or tried and false narrative, I guess, that they've gotten for the past like 70 years, then the fact that it's still like crossing over like that, I mean, I'm sure that is a modest representation of what's actually going on, because people are slowly actually hearing about what has been going on for decade after decade in this region, rather than just the sort of tailored version they've heard their entire lives.
Yeah, a couple quick thoughts from me. First of all, just in case, because I know we only put it up for a little bit, it's important to note it's forcing someone to choose who they have more sympathy for. And so that doesn't mean that somebody who says one way doesn't have any for the other. That's important, but it is still a huge change. This is yet another chart. There's been so many charts over the last year that we break it out into all these groups. If you go to graphic, the final one, the graph for independents looks so much more like Democrats than it does like Republicans. And I feel like that's a trend that the media is not picking up on. Also, the first graph of the Americans' overall sympathy, it's like 2 decades go by, and they just suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer, and it takes an apocalyptic event to finally get through to people. And that, I think, is so much on the media and on the politicians, but on the media, it's like this is by far the most suffering they've had, but they've had tons of suffering for decades now, and it didn't break through. And I'm a little bit more when I saw the Republican one, I'm glad that it changed a little bit, but like after what we saw in the last few years, the vast majority like, yeah, I don't care. That tells me there is nothing that could happen. If it fell into the sea, Gaza was just gone. If they nuked it, there's nothing that could be done for like 7 out of 10 Republicans, and that it deeply sickens me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the first 2 points. I gotta say, I don't agree on the last one. So it went from 80 to 70 in terms of support for Israel. So you say, oh, that's not
tens of thousands of kids.
I know. But John, and what I'm saying is, I've seen other polling showing that the support among under 55 Republicans is deteriorating at record pace, right? So, and that's why, now coming back to the main issue here, are we gonna go to war with Iran? We're giving you these numbers to give you a sense of what's giving the White House some pause. The most important polling number is, do you wanna go to war with Iran? And one poll has that as 70% of Americans saying hell no, and another one has 85% of Americans saying hell no, right? So that's why they know they're going up against about 8 out of 10 Americans. So they're like, oh, 10 out of 10 of our donors want the war. 8 out of 10 Americans don't want the war. And Israel's getting more and more despised as we go, and it's even eating into our Republican base. And then finally, the point that John is making is such a great one. The fact that the independents that used to be with the Republicans before this election, right? And why Trump won and all 7 swing states, etc., are now looking identical to the Democratic numbers, should give the Republicans a ton of concern, and they don't seem to be getting it. And so maybe in 2026, that comeuppance will become a lot more real to them.
Yeah, I can't wait for that uppance to come.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.